Via the Magic of Zoom. There it is, right? Am I right? Biggest honor?
You are. Biggest honor of my entire life. So
wow.
Thank you so much. For real. I appreciate it, man. It was, it's great. You know, get into the sport. You want big fights. You want to be in entertaining fights and get the MMA Hour award. So appreciate it.
I wasn't going to go life. I was just going year, but fine. If you want to go life, I'll take that as well. By the way, is that left ear? Is that bigger than normal? What's going on over there?
Oh man, my left ear is always. I got my hair cut this morning because I knew I was accepting this award, the MMA Hour Fight of the Year award. So I got my hair cut at 8:30 this morning.
Thank you.
And he's like, "Hey, how's the hair look up top?" I'm like, "Length looks good, but if you could just chop this left ear off, that'd be great."
Oh my gosh.
I always said I'll never get my ears surgically fixed because I want to keep the cauliflower ear, but the inside and like back of this left ear makes it stick out much further than the right. So I'll probably take a little bit out of the back, keep the cauliflower, but just sew it closer to my head because it does stick out way much. So thanks for bringing it up.
No, I mean, it just, for some reason, it's just like staring at me. Maybe it's because of the haircut, because it's high and tight here. So it's like a lot more pronounced. I don't know what it is.
It's the haircut. Well, that's how my barber started talking. I'm like, man, I always forget how big my ears are until I trim down the hair a little bit and then they stick out even more. And then I put these headphones in, which are, I always get, I'm sure people are in the comments right now talking about how my headphones have the hardest job on the planet. And whenever I wear my little Apple AirPod ones, they're like, oh man, that AirPod's hanging on by a thread. So whatever. These are my ears.
Do you have to get it drained a lot?
No. So these are completely hard. And by the way, these are actually from college wrestling. I have not really had a soft, mushy cauliflower ear in the last 13, 14 years since I started fighting. These are all from college wrestling. So whenever anybody asks me, hey, I see your ears, you must fight. I say, hey, I do fight coincidentally, but I got these from college wrestling.
Wow.
So I got to give my college wrestling props.
Interesting. Okay. Yes. By the way, a guy named Gregor Gillespie has been talking a lot about your collegiate wrestling days. These
He did beat me.
I mean, like really, I have to admit, I did not watch the match. Only once you wrestled against him?
We only wrestled once, at NCAAs in 2009. My senior year, I think it was his junior year.
Making it seem like he wiped the floor with you. I mean, was it that one-sided?
I don't even remember.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't remember what the score was. Yeah, he beat me pretty handedly. But because the unfortunate thing about wrestling is, you can make one move and then boom, I ended up on my back. I think I shot in, ended up on my back, gave up a 5-point move, and then wasn't able to come back. But he said some choice words, I guess, but he's also, vying for that Tony Ferguson fight or whatever. So I don't really know how I got thrown in the crosshairs, but whatever, dude. Good job, Greg. You beat me. You beat me in wrestling.
We will talk about all that stuff in a second, but I do want to ask you, because we spoke to you a week or so removed from that MSG event where you had that incredible fight against Justin Gaethje. You were still a little bit banged up, but still, you had come an incredible way since, that night where we saw you go into the ambulance. How long did it take, and maybe it's not yet, for you to like fully recover physically from that fight?
It took a while. I mean, we had a lot of soft tissue damage. I mean, obviously, the face is always the most telling, right? But the face luckily heals up pretty quick. I got some stitches here, stitches in my lip, which those came out in like 2 days. I think those had already come out by the time you and I had our interview like 5 days later. And really just soft tissue damage. I mean, obviously there's no doubt I took a lot of leg kicks. So my left leg was pretty beat up. My right foot, from the leg kicks that I landed on Justin Gaethje, my right foot, right ankle is still a little bit creaky when I wake up in the morning.
Wow.
But I mean, it was probably 6 weeks total to where I felt like I was able to really, really train 100% again. And then, just more than that, just pulling myself out of training camp, out of the crazy hustle and bustle of the hours and hours a day, 6 days a week, staying up on my rehab, staying up on my prehab and all that kind of stuff. And body feels great, but just needed a little bit of time off.
How many times have you watched the fight start to finish?
Probably 3 or 4, not a ton. I don't think I've watched it probably in a month and a half.
Okay.
I think I probably watched it a couple times that first month or so, whenever I was kind of really just kind of chilling to give my body some rest. Now that I've been out and about and hustling and bustling, just been busy doing other things. But I've seen a lot of highlights, obviously, with all the awards that have been going out and stuff. been seeing a lot of highlights on social medias, but not full on all 15 minutes.
And just curious, I mean, obviously we know that when you're training for a fight, when you're in fight camp, you're in Florida, you're at Sanford, but that's not your home. Your home is in Nashville, I do believe. And so when you're home, I mean, you're always in incredible shape, and I know you're always training, but like, how seriously are you training?
Right now, just not serious at all. I mean, obviously, you know, when I'm in training camp, it's 2-3 times a day sometimes. And I mean, right now I won't do more than one workout a day. If I do a mixed martial arts training, I might do some cardio that day. But really a lot of between training camps is cardio, strength and conditioning, rebuild some of the muscle that I muscle wasted during, you know, the cut. You know, for me, I got to cut a decent amount of weight. And to do that, I have to calorie restrict and ramp up my cardio, lose a little bit of muscle mass. So I try to put on a little bit more muscle mass, continue to strengthen the joints and all that between training camps. And then I have a gym here in town called Nashville MMA. So I got a stable of guys that I train with here. I should be making it down to Florida here very soon to get back around my team, to get back to, you know, my homeostasis, my feeling of home. Not to go into a training camp, but just go down there for a couple of days, see the boys, train a little bit, see coaches, and get after it.
All right, so let's talk about what could potentially be next. I had heard some rumblings of Tony. Was there any truth to that?
Tony's an interesting cat, man. I mean, where are we at now? What do you mean? We're in January, so we're 8-10 weeks removed from the fight.
Yeah,
10 weeks removed from the fight, maybe, whatever it is. So, you know, as we just said, it took me 6 weeks to recover from the last one to actually stop hobbling around. And then, yeah, I heard something last week. He wanted to fight me in February, which was a 5-week notice, you know. So unfortunately, the guy will say, and you follow the sport, you know, whenever a guy says, hey, I want to fight this guy, but I want more money, or I want to fight this guy, but it's got to be on this date. I want to fight this guy, but it's got to be at this weight. When you add these little caveats and asterisks, are you really asking for the fight, or are you only doing it on your terms, or in a scenario where you know a guy's not ready to fight? I'm not ready to fight in February. It's less than, you know, it's 5 weeks away. So yeah, there were some rumblings. He was tweeting, and then him and Gregor were tweeting, and, you know, Twitter's a place where people, you know, talk. So I would love to fight Tony, but he's, you know, we got to do it on a normal time frame. Selection up to speed. I signed with the promotion, the UFC, in September. Got offered the October 24th card. Tony's name was on that list. He declined. Then I made weight October 24th. And then 3 weeks later, he said he wanted to fight me in December, which I pulled myself out of training camp, wasn't ready to go back into a training camp, and then went all over social media and said that I turned down a fight and wouldn't fight him, and I was afraid of him. But once again, it was a short notice Tony type of offer, right? It's got a Tony shaped bow on top of the offer, right? So Tony is Tony, and I respect the guy, love the way that he fights, would love to fight him, would love to share the octagon with him, but it's got to be on a normal time frame. Everybody knows what a normal time frame is. You need 8-10 weeks to train for a fight. I take the sport very seriously. I take these fights very seriously. So no, I'm not going to fight a guy on 5 weeks notice. Just, you know, saying yes to a fight 8 or 10 weeks after a previous fight, which got the prestigious MMA Hour Fight of the Year award. And you can't do that without getting into a little bit of damage. So that's where we're at.
So to be clear, though, if it's, I guess, maybe April, like what you tell me the month, you are interested in this fight and fighting Tony Ferguson. It's just that you know, proposed February timeframe didn't work for you, correct?
I'm dipping to a Tony fight. I think a Tony fight checks a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for. I mean, I've just had such a crazy ride the last 16 months. I mean, even rewind all the way back to March of 2020 when I go to New York for the press conference for my last fight on my Bellator contract. Mm-hmm. That fight finally gets pushed back and finally gets scheduled after the COVID stuff in August. So I was in camp for 6 months. Then I had 2 weeks off, signed with the UFC, then weighed in October, then fought in January, beat Dan Hooker, then fought for the title in May, and then fought Justin Gaethje in November. You know, so I need a little bit of time off. I'm not the kind of guy who's lazy. I'm not the kind of guy who's always asking and always adding little caveats to when I'm going to fight and who I'm going to fight. Tony is definitely a guy that checks a lot of the boxes. But there's a lot of different, you know, a couple different guys that I would love to fight. At this point, I'm sitting back, licking my wounds physically from the fight. I feel phenomenal. I'm excited about 2022. I think 2022 is going to be a huge year for myself and the company as a whole. So Tony is definitely a guy on that list, and we'll see. It's just got to be on a normal time frame. Yeah, definitely sometime this early summer.
Realistically, who is at the very top of that list?
I mean, there's a couple guys. There's a couple guys that make a lot of sense. As we've talked in the past, Conor makes a lot of sense. The timeline works out well. He's coming back around the time that I want to come back. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's number one on the list. He makes sense. Tony Ferguson makes sense. Dustin Poirier makes sense. Nathan Diaz makes sense. There's a lot of guys. There's a couple guys ranked ahead of me. A lot of them are tied up. You got Makhachev and Dariush already scheduled. You got Gaethje, who thinks he's fighting Oliveira next. Conor could come back, skip the entire line. Who knows what's going to happen? I have a hard time thinking that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. Tony's been the only one that has reached out to us or said anything to us publicly. But those are a couple of the names on the list. I mean, I want some big fights. I want some exciting fights, some fights that the fans are gonna want to buy the pay-per-view for or travel to go to, put their butts in the seats in some arena somewhere. But either way, the lightweight division is still the most exciting division on the planet and in the promotion in the world. So I'm excited about the opportunities.
I know that you say that you want some time off, but you also do like to be relatively active. If they said to you, hypothetically, like, hey, we do want you to fight Conor next, but it has to be in, let's just say, August, because, he snapped his ankle in July. He needs 13 months to come back. Would you be okay waiting until August, meaning you probably are only fighting once in 2022, or would that not, obviously Conor is the perfect scenario. He's the biggest star in the history of the sport, but that's a long ways away. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a tough decision if it was that far off. But I mean, I am a busy guy. I got a lot of stuff going on outside of just fighting, and that's the way I like to operate. A lot of different business stuff going on, a lot of different real estate stuff going on, adding some speaking stuff that I'm doing. So I'm a busy guy outside of just training, and of course, fitness for me is a lifestyle. That's not just because I'm a mixed martial artist. I love to stay in shape. I just met Andrew Hall today from Arsenal Strength. We're building out this Arsenal Strength Iron Paradise in my backyard right now with a podcast studio and pool house and all that kind of cool stuff. So I got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of irons in the fire. I would have no problem waiting until August if that was the right opportunity or if that was the right scenario. But as you said, I do like to stay busy. As we just said, I fought January, May, and November of 2021, and two of those fights, were up for the honors of the year. So I'm very happy with my road inside the UFC thus far. And that's what I said right away. I was going to come in with my work boots on and I was going to say yes to every opportunity. And that's really what I did. So we'll see as the opportunities come and as they present itself and as the division irons itself out, we'll see where I fit in.
By the way, motivational speaking, or the speaking that you talked about, very interesting to me, because we have often said with you, like, you are the perfect guy to do that sort of thing. Can you tell us about that? What are you going to be doing? Because I feel like this is a layup for you.
I don't know. I don't know about perfect. I definitely have a lot of. I think if you and me are sitting here, we could talk for hours, and we can come up with different things, and you ask me questions. I mean, speaking on a stage and making people feel something on a stage in front of 1,000 people or 100,000 people, no matter what the difference is. You have to have a clear, concise message. You have to have it practiced and planned out and rehearsed and ready, and then ready for what may go right or go wrong. I mean, my network of people that I have around me, some really, really great influential speakers and business people and authors who I've just been blessed to have in my network of people. We're putting some things together for 2022, me getting on some stages and doing some more speaking. I've done some in the past at churches, at men's groups, at other business conferences and stuff, and just enjoying the ride. I think I do have a lot of messaging that resonates with a lot of people, especially the small guy from a small town who was taught to do small things. And I know I've said it 1,000 times and people are probably sick of hearing it, but I think we all have a small guy from a small town inside of us that holds us back. And we got to get really good at duct taping his mouth shut so we don't hear it. So we'll see. I think 2022, I start to dive into that more. because that's been something that's been on my heart and I've been thinking about for a while. 2021 was too dang busy.
Right.
2020, we had no idea what was going on. The year before that, I was still focused on winning the world title. So still focused on winning the world title, still focused on huge fights inside the UFC, but also focused on continuing to impact people outside of just punches, kicks, knees, and elbows.
I love that. I think it would be perfect for that. I want to ask you about back in December, we saw Charles Oliveira fight Dustin Poirier, and you were quite critical of Mr. Poirier afterwards about the way that fight ended. Do you still feel the same way? Because I think you may have said afterwards that it was a little harsh in retrospect, and I know some people kind of came after you, including your old foe, Mr. Pitbull. You were critical about the finish of that fight. Do you still feel the same way?
I do feel the same way. Yeah, I mean, rule number one: if you're going to come after somebody, don't come after one of the good guys in the sport. You know, that's
Right.
when you get the backlash. You know, it's easy to criticize guys who make questionable decisions, but a guy like Dustin Poirier who does charity work and he's an upstanding citizen and never says a cross word about too many people, which we'll get to that in a minute. But, I do think the hardest, and I even saw like Sean O'Malley a couple 2 weeks ago or something talk about, hey, you should just tap because there's no, when it's locked in that much, there should be no ego involved. It's over. You should just tap. And I think the hardest part about a choke, now you get knocked out, you lose your wits. You don't know which way's up, which way's down. You get finished. That's one thing. But when a choke goes in, it's really up to the guy who's being choked on whether or not that choke gets fully finished. He taps, he goes completely out unconscious. So it's really hard and there's really nobody that knows how tight a choke is. I've been in some chokes where the whole entire arena is closing in and I somehow get out of it. I've never been submitted in my career. Not to say that I won't. Anything can happen, but I think sometimes you just have to be willing to go a little bit further and then those chokes come out. So the reason I was critical of Dustin Poirier has been his dismissal and just downright disrespect of me when I came into the UFC into the UFC lightweight division. Whenever me and even after Dustin made the decision that he didn't want to fight for the UFC title and he wanted to hold out for the money fight against Conor, when me and Oliveira were next in line and we said yes and we were going to fight, instead of just saying, hey, I decided to fight Conor, let these guys fight for the title, he called the title fool's gold. And I think that was part of it. My only regret from pencil in fool's gold somewhere, because that's what he called the title that Charles Oliveira won. And then Charles Oliveira went out there and finished him. And now we have to sit back and all keep our mouths shut about who Charles Oliveira is, unless we decide to say that he is the best fighter on the planet at 155 pounds. He's our undisputed lightweight champion. And I think Dustin Poirier ate his words that night.
We actually lost you there for a quick second. You said your only regret was what? It was a tremendous answer.
Oh, shoot.
Your only regret was, and then I lost you.
Oh, man, inopportune time. No, my only regret was that I didn't type in fool's gold somewhere in that statement, because that was exactly what Dustin Poirier called the title that me and Charles Oliveira fought for. Dustin Poirier decided to take the money fight against Conor, which don't blame him whatsoever, but that's a decision that you make. So don't go ahead and just discredit the guys who are fighting for the title and call the title fool's gold. So the fool's gold champion, Charles Oliveira, went out there and finished Dustin Poirier, which is just a little bit ironic. And so that's what I said.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Nathan Diaz. I know he's been sort of flirting with Dustin, but he's got his contract issues. I would love to see you versus Dustin at some point in 2022. You got the feeling last January when you guys were in Abu Dhabi, like there was some tension there between you guys when you were on the same card. He beats Conor, you beat Hooker. Where does that tension stem from?
I don't know if there was much tension there at that point in time. I mean, you got to rewind back to my last fight. My last fight in Bellator was August of 2020, whatever. I'm losing the track of the years these
2020.
days. And it was the first time that we met each other, shook each other's hands, both said that we were both, fans of each other's fight style and the way that we approach the sport and respect. And it was almost when I came into the UFC, of course, I become a competitor of his, and then his tune, changed and which is completely fine. We're all here fighting for the same thing. He's fighting for UFC gold. I'm fighting to get the UFC gold. That's where we want to be. So I get that. And even during that fight, it was, I think there was mutual respect. And then he got on during that press conference, if the UFC wants me to fight Chandler, I'm not going to do it. He hasn't earned it, basically. And I completely get that. I came into the UFC, offered Tony Ferguson. He said no. Offered Dustin Poirier. They said no. So I was the backup in October. And then even after that, we offered Tony. He said no. We offered Poirier. He said no. Rightfully so, because he was going to fight Conor. So Dan Hooker was the first guy, or the guy who finally stepped up, and I fought him January 23rd, kind of on like I was already in training camp knowing I was training for that date, but it was on a 4 or 5 week notice. But I was already training, so it was all good. So I don't know, man. I think it was, I get why he didn't want to fight me at that point, because I hadn't, quote unquote, proven myself. But now I've been in the UFC now for over a year, won a couple of awards, been in a couple of big fights, fought for the title, fell short, fought Justin Gaethje, fell short. Maybe now that I've got a loss or two under my belt in the UFC, maybe he's changed his tune and he sees a path to go out there and fight me, beat me, and want to fight me, but who knows?
Will you feel incomplete? Will you feel regretful if by the end of your career you don't become a UFC champion? Do you think this will eat you inside if you don't become a UFC champion?
I think right now I say yes, but my goal and hope is that I continue moving forward and continue to build myself up, build my self-worth up enough to where when I lay those gloves down in the middle of that UFC octagon, having not won the UFC title, if that's the case, that I will at that moment be accepting of it, because I know I've done everything that I possibly could. Listen, if I was not destined to be the UFC champion, it wasn't because I didn't try my hardest. It wasn't because I wasn't absolutely disciplined in everything that I did. It wasn't because I made the requisite sacrifices to become a UFC champion. It just wasn't in the cards. But right now I say yes, it would feel incomplete. But my goal is that future Michael, who does lay his gloves down for the last time and decides to retire, that I'll realize that chapter is over. The sun will rise the next day, and we'll move on to bigger and better things outside of fighting in an octagon, fighting in hand-to-hand combat that will probably most likely have a much bigger impact than fighting inside the octagon will.
I talked about before you came on the show about how this could be a huge year for some potential free agents in our sport. You're the best case study of, hey, fight out your contract. There could be a massive pot of gold and great new opportunities waiting for you. But it's a weird thing, free agency in our particular sport, because it almost doesn't apply to everyone, right? Those same rules don't, like for some people, it's actually smarter not to test the market. For others, it is smart to test the market. Would you advocate that people in your position all test the market, all try to bet on themselves? Because you could lose that last fight, your leverage goes down. You know how the game is played. Like, what would be your message to someone who is thinking, should I or shouldn't I?
Well, it's hard because, now from the position that I sit, the best decision I made in my professional career was testing free agency from Bellator,
right,
to have the opportunity to go to the UFC. Now, I did hear you as I came on in the green room, the virtual green room.
Yeah.
I heard you talking about Diaz and Conor and Ngannou and some of these guys. These guys understand that the UFC is the biggest promotion. They don't quite understand how great of a promotion the UFC is, because a lot of them, it's all that they know. It's all that Conor knows. It's all that Francis knows. It's all that Nate Diaz really knows. They don't quite know how much better the UFC is than every other organization, how much better they are treated from a medical standpoint, from a promotion standpoint, from a platform standpoint, from a legitimate business standpoint. Me being outside of the UFC and coming into the UFC, I have the luxury of understanding the difference between other fight promotions and the UFC. Now, the landscape also has changed. You got Tyson Fury talking about fighting Francis Ngannou. Could Francis Ngannou go make tens of millions of dollars boxing? That, to me, is that's the biggest free agent dangling of the carrot, more so than any other mixed martial arts promotion. There's no other mixed martial arts promotion on the planet that will give you platform and financial gain than the UFC. And I've seen that, I've watched that. And I'm extremely excited to be a part of the UFC. I said before I signed with Dana White, when I had my first phone call with him, And whether you agree or other people agree or disagree, I said, listen, Dana, I've signed a lot of checks in the last 13 years, and not one of them have had your name on them, but indirectly your name has been on every single check that I have cashed in the last 13 years because you built the industry. The UFC built the sport and made it a worldwide, world known sport and organization. So that's my belief, and my experience is going to be different than a lot of people's, but that's been my experience thus far, and the UFC has not disappointed whatsoever, and I've enjoyed it. So it's a hard decision, and it's also a hard perspective because I think these guys are in the UFC not quite knowing how great the UFC is because it's all that they know.
By the way, that's a fantastic line. I agree with the line, by the way. I'm able to separate, I'm able to be unbiased, and you are 100% right in what you said about him being indirectly attached to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if that sealed the deal because it's just a tremendous line. So well done, Michael. Well done.
Thank you. Well, hey, I did tell a guy one time, he's like, man, that was the best sales pitch I ever heard. Man, you must have got it. I was like, dude, it wasn't a sales pitch. And one of the main pillars of sales is the first sale is to yourself. I truly believe that. And maybe some people are going to say me, brown noser, and they're going to bring up Dana White privilege and all that kind of stuff. But business is business, and good business is better than bad business. And I've always made myself a really good employee and made myself an indispensable asset. Therefore, I've continued to climb the ladder and trying to do that inside the UFC right now as well. So,
two last quick ones, and I'll let you go. And by the way, I love the touch of the of the fireplace right next to your right. I mean, it's just so cozy. Did you put that on for us, or is it just always playing in your house?
No, well, I was freezing earlier. Actually, that's why I put on my sweatshirt, and I kicked the fire on and I turned the heat on because I was cold earlier for some reason. But yeah, no,
it's just nice.
That was my wife's design.
It's beautiful. She's a great designer. I mean, the whole background here is fantastic. I want you to come to my, or at least her come to my house to fix things up over there. Is she an interior designer? No, she's a doctor. She's just good at these things. Yeah. Apparently.
She's just good. Yeah, she's just good. She knows what she likes, and she likes nice things. So it gets me in trouble sometimes, or gets us in trouble. So I got to keep on working hard. But no, it's good. She designed this place, and it's pretty great.
God bless. Okay, two predictions, and I'll let you go. Number one, and we won't hold you to it, but prediction time, beginning of the year. Who's the lightweight champion of the UFC come December 31st, 2022?
Man, if I don't say myself, but I mean,
say it. You can say it.
I think that's my plan. Okay. My plan is in 1 year be the UFC lightweight champion. I think there's a path. One fight away from fighting for the title. I mean, you got the most obvious choice right now is Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. I think the entire mixed martial arts community would probably love to see me run that back. Of course, there's other guys that people would love to see, but those are two guys that I've already fought, already had great fights with. And if either of those guys are holding the championship by the end of the year, how am I not fighting them? And then even more so, how am I not beating them? So that's my prediction.
By the way, side note, who wins that fight in your opinion?
Daggone, man. I think Oliveira might win that fight, man. Wow. I'm telling you, there's been a maturation process that we've watched. There's been we've always, we look at Charles Oliveira. He's had a spotty past, couple ups. He's had a lot more downs than a lot of people, a lot of losses. A lot of those at 145, missed weight, given up on himself, quit on himself. That's been one of his things. We saw that against me. He didn't give up on himself. We saw that against Dustin. He kept the pressure on him, finished him. I think Gaethje, obviously the best way Gaethje wins that fight, it goes out there and just Gaethjes him and gets into a brawl. And I will say Justin Gaethje is harder to take down with his stance, with the way that he drops his level, and his head is always in between you and him. In wrestling, we talk about the couple different levels of defense, and your head is always the first level of defense in wrestling. Justin Gaethje lowers his head so much, closes his eyes and swings, that it's hard to get underneath him and get to his legs. So I think Oliveira is going to have a harder time taking him down than he thinks. But I do think Oliveira might actually have the edge in that fight.
Last prediction, you versus who and when? When's the next time we see you? Who do you think it is and when?
There you go, man. I mean, sometime this early summer, after I give myself some much needed time off. And I think at this point, as we've said, it's a long shot that we see Conor. But I think it's Conor or Ferguson.
Okay. Wow. Tremendous. Always great to catch up.
Or Nate Diaz.
Or Nate Diaz.
If Nate Diaz, me and Nate, nobody's ever talked about me and Nate Diaz fighting, but for some reason I'm like, I feel like me and Nate Diaz should probably share the octagon at some point. And obviously I know he's got some, his contract's coming to a close. He's looking at fighting Poirier. That's a fight that he said he wants, but then he called the UFC and the UFC said Poirier sucks. That tweet was genius.
Right. It was great.
Yeah. So we'll throw Nate Diaz's name in the hat, and I'd love to fight at 170 instead of 155. I'll tell you that much.
Oh my gosh! Permanently or just a one-off with Nate?
Oh well, definitely. When I fight Diaz, it's going to be at 170 for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, man. I mean, I've been competing in the 150s since I was a senior in high school. I wrestled 152, then wrestled 157 in college for 5 years. Now I've been fighting at 155. I graduated high school at 160, graduated college at like 172. Now I'm like 190, and I'm still cutting down to the 150s. Yeah. So that 150 something is not very fun. Health-wise, it's one of the things that makes it hard for this. One of the things that makes it hard in this sport. Not only are you taking damage with the actual nature of fighting hand-to-hand combat, but me getting myself down to the 150s is not easy. When I got done with this last fight, I said, I don't want to make 155 unless it was Conor or for a title. Obviously I lost that fight. I'm not fighting for the title next. And, Conor could be a long shot at this point, but I would love to, fight him, but we'll see what happens. I definitely don't want to make 155, but I am a man of my word, and I signed a contract at 155 pounds. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
Tremendous stuff as always, Mike. Thank you so much for the time. Congrats on a great year. All the best to you and your family in 2022, and looking forward to what's next. And keep us posted on those speaking engagements as well.
You got it, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
All right, there he is, the one and only Michael Chandler. Always a great chat, always a great interview, and wow, a lot of nuggets there.